Here with one of my long-time personal friends,
Yep.
the one and only ring announcer extraordinaire, Gary Michael
And
Cappetta.
we just got back from the Thai restaurant, and Ace asked me to come on in and tell him a story about this, that, or the other thing. So what's on your mind, Ace?
Awesome. Gary, you worked for WCW, you worked for the WWF. This might be a pretty easy question when you first think about it, but I bet there's more to it. What is an average day for a ring announcer when you get to a show? And was it different in the WWF compared to WCW?
Yeah, it was different because I was just starting out with the WWF. So all I did was get together what I needed to get together for ring announcing, find out who's wrestling whom, and I mostly knew the information about everybody because I was doing their TVs. With WCW, I also handled the music, so I had to be sure that I got there extra early, meet with the building sound person, set up, tell them this is going to be the first match, this is going to be the first guy out, and this is his music. This is the second guy out, this is his music. And then, because we weren't going to give any finishes away, I had to tell him, be sure that you listen to my announcement as to who won the match, and then at the end of the match, when you hear the name, then you play his music.
Was it cassette tapes?
Yeah, they were cassette tapes.
So did you have to rewind them every night?
Absolutely.
Really?
Yeah.
Very
I
interesting.
had to carry all those damn tapes around with me.
What was the biggest difference working for WCW than it was working for the WWF?
Experience. You know, I was more self-confident when I was with WCW. I was also working full-time. So I was on the road doing one-nighters, about 200 nights a year, as opposed to when I was with the WWF in my earlier years, I was still teaching school. So I was moonlighting as an announcer.
Got it. For WCW, you were there through a lot of different bosses and a lot of different changes. Can you give me maybe a couple minutes or a couple seconds, as much as you want to go, just what it was like to work for each different boss?
Well, the guy that hired me was Jim Herd. He was the executive vice president. And the way that came about was I already had been doing NWA Clash of the Champions specials, and I had been doing pay-per-views for them, but I wasn't signed to any kind of a contract. I was still teaching school. So Vern Gagne called me up, asked me if I'd come into Chicago. It was December of 1988, and he wanted me to do Super Clash 3. So I said, sure, we made a deal. He flew me out to Chicago. When that aired, I got word from Jim Herd telling me that I was not allowed to do anyone else's TVs.
Wow.
And I said to the person that gave me the message, I said, will you tell Jim Herd, first off, he knows my telephone number and he could have called me to tell me. But since he wants to speak through you, tell him the only way that I'm going to turn down work outside of WCW or NWA is if he guarantees me for the year. Because I'm not going to lose out on money because I'm hurting his feelings. And within 8 months, they offered me a contract. So I had a pretty good relationship with him. I know that he was a doofus. I know he didn't know too much about what was going on. You know, he had some really stupid ideas. There was one time we were doing a Clash of the Champions. It was the debut of El Gigante. Remember El Gigante?
Of course.
7'4",
Sure.
7'7", however tall he was. So I knew nothing about El Gigante. And I get to the arena in Charleston, South Carolina. And Jim Herd is there, and he says to me, he said, Gary, I got something special for you tonight. I said, cool. He said, I want you to do an interview in the center of the ring with our newest acquisition. I said, that's fine. He said, he's a real tall guy. I said, that sounds good. And what we're going to do is we're going to put a ladder in the middle of the ring, and you're going to climb up to the top of the ladder. I said, what for? He said, well, then you'll be his height, and you'll be able to interview him. So now I'm thinking to myself, it's not a good thing to contradict your boss. So what you usually have to say is, oh, that's interesting. And then you have to come back, think real fast. And I said to him, Jim, Because I'm thinking to myself, an aluminum ladder that wobbles on an uneven surface on live TV in front of 4 million people, like, I see disaster all over this. So I said to him, Jim, I said, here's a thought for you. If I'm just standing next to him and I have to raise the microphone up, don't you think that will
Visual,
make him,
yeah.
visually?
Of course.
And he went with that. So
Wow.
luckily, so you just had to know how to deal with him. Then there was Kip Allen Fry. He didn't last long. He was a really nice guy. Bill Watts, I didn't have much problem with. I didn't have any problem with him. Bill Watts, like Ole Anderson, they knew what they wanted. You did what they asked, and they were happy. And it's just that if you tried to buck them, although Bill Watts, he did take some ideas that I had, and he didn't. It just depends on how you talk to people, how you present them. Like, do you remember the night that Ron Simmons beat Vader?
I do.
It actually was, as we're recording, 30 years ago from today.
Wow. Was that in Baltimore?
It was in Baltimore. Yes. And he was going to go out, and his plan was, and tell the people that Sting. Remember, Sting was attacked by Rick Rude that night, and he was supposed to wrestle Vader for the title.
Was it Jake Roberts?
Jake Roberts, you're right.
Yeah.
Jake Roberts. Yes, thank you. And so therefore Sting couldn't wrestle for the title. And Bill Watts, who had just taken over, he was going to tell the people this. So I listened to the plan because he took the people like Ron Simmons and Vader and Jake and the referee and anyone that was involved, and we had a little huddle in the hall. He was telling us how he wanted this to go. And I listened. And I didn't interrupt because he's the boss. And when he was done and we started to disperse, I said to him, Bill, I said, if that's how you want it, sounds good to me. But if you go out there and when you make the announcement that Sting's not going to wrestle for the title, they're going to boo you. They're going to boo you out of the arena. And this is like one of your first times on TV, and I don't know that that's how you want to set the tone. Whereas if I tell the people that, and they boo me, who cares? I'm always getting booed. And he said, Gary, that's a good idea. So it was like another, so he was easy to work with. Eric Bischoff never appreciated what I did. He didn't understand my value, and I'll leave that at that. So yeah, it was just Dusty Rhodes when he was the booker. He was very much. He was a lot of fun to work with. He was a motivator, just because you're just having a good time, just so you did your work.
That's awesome. You were there for a lot of big moments in WCW. You were there for a lot of crazy times. Can you tell us about the time that Mick Foley lost his ear?
Oh yeah. What a lot of people don't realize about that is that the ear actually came off of his head in Munich, Germany. But it all began months and months before that, when he would do that spot where he'd get slung into the ropes, put his head between the top and the center rope, and flip himself over. And then that was not a problem. The damage always would occur when the referee would try to open the ropes, and he would slip through.
Right.
And every night, little by little, his ears were getting nicked. He was traveling with me in Florida once, and we visited my mom, and his ears were pussy, and this was way before Munich, Germany, and she put I don't know whether it was like rubbing alcohol or something. He was squealing like a pig because it was like burning so much. So, and he would just tape his ears down to the side of his head. So when we got to Munich, Germany, they were ready to come off. Except this time in Munich, we didn't have a referee from the United States. The guy's name was Didier Guet from France. And he didn't know what he was supposed to do when Foley was in those ropes. And the ropes were tied extra tight. So when he went in, the little referee, even if he knew what to do, I don't think he could have pulled them apart. So that really was the final straw. So when he came into the ring, and I think Vader clobbered him, and the ear came off. So yeah, that's it. It all didn't just happen in one night. Is my point.
But you actually went and picked up the ear. You
Oh
had.
no, it was the referee picked it up. He picked it. He squatted down, and he was like amazed, like his eyes were bulging, and he with his two fingers he picked it up like tweezers, and he had something. I didn't know what. I didn't know his ear had come off. I'm sitting at ringside with like my nose to the mat, and he takes it and he comes over to me and he yells, "Ambulance, ambulance," because he didn't speak English.
Right.
But that I understood, you know, what he we need medical attention, and he takes it and he flips it to me, and it hits the mat below, and I'm looking at it, and it looked like a piece of uncooked chicken fillet with long strands of hair taped to it. So I picked it up and I put it in my hand, and I would never leave ringside, but this was an emergency.
Yeah.
So I scurry back, and Ric Flair was in charge that night. And in the back in Munich, Germany, it was very dark. Every once in a while there was a downlight. And I go up to Flair and I said to him, he said, "What are you doing back here?" Because he knew that I would never leave ringside. And I said to him, "Rick, I've got Cactus's ear in my hand." He said, "What?" I said, he wasn't understanding. So I took him by the arm and I pulled him underneath one of these downlights. So a couple of the guys like Sting, they just thought this was amazing. And I said, "Guys, I can't, no show and tell now. I need to find a doctor." So the doctor was in the last dressing room. I think he was taping up Booker T. And and I left. So now the match had gone on. Just because he lost his ear didn't mean he stopped the match.
Right.
But in that time that I was backstage, the match did end. And so I'm shooting out toward the ring, still backstage because it was a Sportahala. They're circular. So I'm going around to where the entrance is, and Mick is coming towards me. And he's got his hand over the side of his head where his ear used to be. And he just looked at me and said, "You're not going to believe this, but it's true. Bang, bang, I lost my ear." I just think he was in shock. So that's what happened in Munich, Germany.
That's a great story. Can you tell me about traveling with a rookie Undertaker, Mean Mark?
Oh, Mean Mark. He had just arrived. Mark Calloway had just arrived at WCW. So he was. I had never met him before. I think he had come in from Texas, maybe World Class. And it was his first television taping. We were up in Saginaw, Michigan, and it was freezing. It was snowy. The roads were icy. So he wrestled, during the tapings, and at the end of the night, most of the guys were gone. They were heading towards Detroit. It was Steiner Brothers' hometown area, and guys were going to someplace to celebrate, whatever. They were going to a club or something. But me, I always would travel on to the next town. I'd drive through the night. So I'm getting changed. Everything was kind of empty. Guys were gone. And all of a sudden, someone says, "Hey." And I thought I was alone. And in the shadows in the corner was Mark Calloway. And he had changed. And he was just sitting there. And he said, "Who are you traveling with?" I said, "Well, nobody, but I usually don't." I said, "Why? What's up?" He said, "Well, I need to get to the next town." So I said, "Well, you can come with me." I said, "But I travel through the night. If that works for you." He said, "Sure." Anyway, so we had maybe 5 or 6 cities in the Midwest that week, that loop. And the last one was in Cincinnati, Ohio, at the Cincinnati Gardens. And in the beginning, he was really quiet. And remember, he didn't know anybody. He didn't know the politics. He didn't know whether he could trust me. He didn't know what he should say to me. He didn't know if I was a stooge. He didn't know anything. So little by little, I think he learned to trust me and became more and more open. And, talked about himself and his background, and I shared mine. by the time we got toward the end of the week, he said to me, you know that Buzz Sawyer, he said, if I get him alone, I'm going to beat the shit. He said, in Texas, when I wanted to train to be a wrestler, he had a school down there. He had an advertisement. I went, but I didn't have the money for the tuition. So I go to my brother and I borrow the money. It was a couple $1,000, $2,500, something like that. I paid him. I went to like 2 weeks worth of training, and he disappeared. He left. I come to find out he went to California. So now I have no training, and I owe my brother. I started to bounce at bars, he said, in order to make extra money to pay my brother back. So that MFer, he said, you know, when I, you know, so it was like, Mark, I don't think that's like really a good idea, you know, because you're new here, and Ole Anderson was the booker, and so we go to Cincinnati, and now in Cincinnati it was different from most of the venues because legitimately the good guys and the bad guys were in totally different locker rooms on totally different sides. So for some reason I didn't usually do this, but for some reason I was on the heel side, and at the once again the end of the night, I come back, and there were only two guys left in the locker room. Buzz, who's coming back from the main event, and Mark, who's already sitting there and dressed ready to go. So Buzz walks by Mark, you know, a little bit on the other side, and looks at him and says, "Don't I know you from somewhere?"
Oh.
Now I'm in the middle of them, and I'm saying, "Oh shit, no." Mark takes a chair that he had his foot resting on, a wooden chair, and he kicks it, and it goes against the wall. He gets up, and he makes his way over and sits at a chair right next to Buzz, who stole $2,500 from me. And Buzz, who's usually buzzed, unfortunately, looked at him and said, "Yeah, I thought I knew you from somewhere." And I got my stuff together real quick. And I said, "Come on, Mark, let's go. I'm on my way out. Let's." And he came with me, and he had some parting words for Buzz. And I said to him, "Look," when we got to the car, I said to him, "He's here because of Ole Anderson, the boss. They go back a long time." I said, "There's no way you can win this."
Right.
I said, "If you do anything to him, you're the one that's going to lose his position. And this is your first opportunity." So, you know, ultimately, I don't think anything physical ever happened between them. But maybe if it wasn't for GMC, there would never be an Undertaker.
Wow, that's a great story. Wow. Can we do a little word association? I'll just rapid fire a few names.
Yeah, try it. I'm not too swift, but try it.
Okay, but again, you can just say a one-word answer. You can say whatever you want. Ric Flair.
Ric Flair. Flamboyant. I'll leave it at that.
Sting.
Nice guy.
Luger.
Changed. He's changed, you know, quite a bit. He used to be pretty arrogant, and now he's very down to earth.
Scott Steiner.
Scotty and I, we didn't really have much in common. We didn't have much interaction. Terrific wrestler.
Rick Steiner.
Rick Steiner, more personable. I saw him not too long ago at a convention. He's a nice guy.
Dusty Rhodes.
Dusty Rhodes was wonderful. Dusty, Great American Bash, Baltimore. It was like 1988, something like that. And so I arrived at the Baltimore Arena, and one of the matches that night was the Triple Tower of Doom. They had one cage on top of another cage on top of another. And in the ceiling, they nested inside of each other. That's how they stored them.
Right.
And then when they lowered them, one came out from the other. So I walk in, maybe like 4 o'clock in the afternoon, because we didn't have catering or anything like that back then. And Dusty and Jim Crockett are standing there, and they're looking up in the air. And I'm like, I say, "Hi, guys," and I'm like, and all of a sudden I hear, and they're having difficulty like lowering this thing, and the showtime is like a few hours. And Jim Crockett, he's more subdued kind of guy, and you can tell his face is like, oh no, oh no. And Dusty, he's loving this. I said, hey Dust, I said, they'll fix it. It'll be fine. He said, I know. He said, but I just love living at the end of a thunderbolt.
That's awesome. That's awesome.
He's just fun to work with.
What about Dustin Rhodes?
Dustin, I saw Dustin not that long ago at when I was did my spot with AEW, and he's great. He's solid. Always enjoyed being around Dustin.
Arn Anderson.
Arn Anderson's another guy, very funny. What a great sense of humor, dry sense of humor, but a very solid guy. Loyalty is important to him.
Ole Anderson.
Say it again.
Ole Anderson.
Ole Anderson. Yeah, he was just like macho, serious. Back in the day when I worked with him. But like I've said before, if he did what he asked you to do, and he was fine with it. I had no problem with him.
Last one, Big Van Vader.
Big Van Vader. I saw like very different sides of him. There was one time in Atlanta where cops were called out because of things he did 3 times in one day. Like he would like piss off someone, he wouldn't pay for something. But then he was a sweetheart. At the same time, like online there are pictures of me with Vader at Harley's house, Harley Race's house. I asked him if I could try on his Super Bowl ring. I saw very different sides of him. But, overall, well, of course, tremendous big man wrestler.
Gary, I'm going to play this from start to finish. This was an awesome conversation. I usually just do clips. This was awesome how it is. Before we go, anything you want to plug? Anything you want to promote?
When is this going up?
Probably next week.
Oh, I'll be doing a virtual signing on a Facebook virtual signing on Sunday, August 21st. So folks can tune in.
And where can people find you?
At that Thai restaurant. Man, was that good?
That was good.
Facebook. At GMC number 4 Real. Or Twitter at Gary Cappetta.
Awesome. Gary, thank you so much. This was great.
It was fun. Appreciate it.
Thank you, buddy.